Alright, and in this game we have Rick on the left and Simon on the right. Players just cutting and drawing their opening 7. Simon leads off with I believe that's a foil hitting Quagmire. Yeah, it's the promo that he got. Rick, meanwhile, leads off with a very fast start, a Lava Step Raider. That's going to get the ball rolling very quickly, but Simon has a 2-2 to stop the 1-2 from getting in any damage, at least for a couple of turns. Lava Step Raider could get in some damage a bit later if it pumps. Rick plays a Forest, considering any number of 2-drops. Goes for an Immobilizer Eldrazi. Not going to do much on this board, but certainly against 0-6 walls and 0-4 walls and anything with higher toughness and power, it's going to do some work if you can get some colourless mana going. Certainly looks like a red-green aggro deck versus something. We don't really know what Simon's on yet. It could be white-green or white-black, or a combination of 3 colours. Looks like it might be white-green if it's not white-green and black. Simon follows it up with his core Scythemaster. Good on aggression, not so good on defense, but he might need it just to block something depending on how aggressive Rick is going to be. There is the colourless mana. Unknown Shore is a card that I absolutely hated in Theros and didn't understand why anyone would play it, but here it has quite a large place and can make some serious impact. Lifespring Druid comes down now, getting a bit more mana into play. Not a lot of action happening here, except that now Simon gets in with 3-1 of First Strike. None of Rick's creatures are going to be able to block that profitably. So he takes 3, drops down to 17. Simon's follow-up is going to be playing another Plains and, of course, Sky Climber. A card that's great in the late game, very solid pickup. Rick untaps. Taps the Lifespring Druid, presumably for a colour that is neither red nor green. Except it may be, he's tapping all 4. To play a Maw of Kozilek. Currently can be a 2-5 or a 4-3. Lifespring Druid, while it can do a lot, cannot produce colourless mana. You do have to add a colour of mana to your mana pool. Simon now, thinking of his next play. 5 mana for General Tazri. Well, he's going to search for another ally. Tazri finding another thing to play certainly makes her quite powerful. I wonder if that black is for anything. That looks like a Malekith Soothsayer, so the black is not just being played as a tap land or as a 3 mana 2-2. It's actually quite a bit better than that. Malekith Soothsayer is going to be excellent on this board. Nicely gummed up, no one attacking. It means it's going to get to draw a lot of cards and get Simon quite a large advantage. Let's see what Rick can do to try and stop the onslaught here. He taps 3 for a Kozilek Shrieker. A surprisingly solid card. Not so good on this board because the Menace doesn't really do very much. Simon can easily block with 2 creatures and a Stalking Drone. So yeah, it looks like we're on Jund colourless aggro things versus mono white but also 5 colour, sorry, but also 3 colour allies going on the other side of the table. I wonder if Simon has a mountain and an island in his decks in order to turn on Tazri's activated ability. I suspect not, but could be pretty good. As it stands, he plays a Plains and considers his options. He could start getting in for 3 in the air with the core Sidemaster, the core Sky Climber, though I suspect, yep, Soothsayer is the play. Again, this nicely gummed up board, it's just going to start accruing value. Simon hasn't taken a single point of damage, and though Rick hasn't either, Rick's creature quality is much poorer than Simon's at this juncture. The 3-4 alone on Simon's side holds off almost the entire board. And Soothsayer being a 4-4 rather than, for instance, a 3-5 means that the Immobilizer Eldrazi's ability is also not going to be very good here. It looks like Tajuru Pathwarden is hitting the battlefield. That might start getting in some damage. Vigilance means that it's very unlikely you're going to be holding it back, and Trample means hopefully you can get in a little bit of damage. The only creature that can stand up to it on its own right now is Malekith Soothsayer, and I don't think Simon wants to trade. Though he could generate Hissing Quagmire into a creature now that he's found an actual black source other than itself. Could just block with the land and get some kind of card advantage that way. Even though he would be trading a card for a card, he's trading a land for an actual creature. It's very good when you can turn your creatures into spells and make them do work. Hissing Quagmire has been very poorly received by the community, and I think unfairly so. Yes, it's only a 2-2 Death Touch, but it's a creature that's also a land. You can't ask for much if you're going to do that. Core Entanglers comes down, taps down the Tajuru Pathwarden, though it will just untap immediately. Simon choosing to play out more creatures rather than sit back on what he has. He can still use Malekith Soothsayer this turn. He could take a hit, or he could double block with, for instance, the Core Entanglers and Felidar Cub. Though Felidar Cub has had a bit of a resurgence in how popular it is and how good it is. Several enchantment-based removal spells in this format, between Suspension Field and Containment Membrane being the standout ones. And Rick's had enough. He's decided that he's going to start getting in with some creatures. So he comes in with the beefiest. He turns Kozilek's Shrieker into a 4-2 with Menace, so it's going to have to be blocked by 2 creatures if Simon wants to block with anything at all on it. Looks like he can safely block the Maw of Kozilek with the Core Entanglers and possibly another creature. Rick no longer has access to colourless mana, which means that Maw of Kozilek will remain a 2-5. He could block with Entanglers and General Tazri and just eat it. He'd be taking a fair amount of damage if he did that, but it might be worth it to get one of the beefier creatures off the board. Looks like Kozilek's Shrieker is being double blocked by Felidar Cub and Tazri, but he's going to take 5. Rick is choosing to kill Tazri. Or is he choosing to kill... Yeah, he's killing Tazri, trading those off. Entanglers and Maw of Kozilek just bounce off. Simon doesn't want to run into any kind of removal spell, which would be a little bit annoying. Rick tapping 5 here for a Territorial Baloth. Attacks as a 6-6 if he has the lands, and now Simon gets to start drawing cards and paying a very small amount of life to do so. Phyrexian Arena, when it's on a 4-4, is quite a good card. Simon untaps and is considering his play. Keeping the Hissing Quagmire untapped for the time being in case he does want to keep it around. He's getting in with that core Sky Climber. No reach or flying on Rick's side of the battlefield means that it will just keep pecking him down. Taps 4 mana. Plays a Woodland Wanderer for 3 colours of mana. It's going to be a 5/5 with Vigilance and Trample. Matches up quite nicely to that Path Warden and stops the Maw of Kozilek getting in. Rick looks like he's in a bit of trouble, though. That might be an Oblivion Strike in his hand. It could do some decent amount of work. Take out the Woodland Wanderer, for instance. Lifespring Druid is doing a lot of work providing Rick's only source of black mana at the minute. He's gotten some good use out of it already, and it looks like he's going to get some more use now. Oblivion Strike taking out the Woodland Wanderer straight away, not letting him get any value off that. Now Rick considers his attacks. He probably wants to get some pressure going here. It feels like he's under the gun from that core Sky Climber, and he's going to have to start really belting some damage back the other way. Territorial Baloth is a reasonably good attacker here. I would get him with the Path Warden and the Maw of Kozilek as well. All three of those are fairly safe attackers. A land wasn't played this turn, so Baloth is only a 4/4, but that's still enough to tussle with anything on Simon's side. Simon considering what he wants to do here. Looks like his best blocks are probably to cash in that Soothsayer on the Tajuru Path Warden or the Territorial Baloth. And then, again, consider the double block on the Maw of Kozilek, though this time Rick does have colourless mana up, so it's probably going to be better to single block with the Entanglers. That way, if Rick does decide to pump, they will trade rather than anything else. Looks like Simon's prioritising killing the Path Warden instead of the Territorial Baloth. After blocks have been declared, it's likely Simon will tap the Soothsayer to draw another card. So he loses a life, draws a card. Takes another 6 damage, 1 from the Trample over from the Tajuru Path Warden and 4 from the Territorial Baloth. But that Soothsayer did some good work. It drew him 2 cards and then traded. Gets him a nice little 3-for-1. With minimal life loss. Rick's creatures have started to become quite beefy. It's possible that Simon's plan here is to block the Territorial Baloth with the Hissing Quagmire. Since it doesn't have Trample, it means that that's a safer block. He loses less damage in the long run that way. Sky Climber continues to get in. All 12 points of damage that have been dealt this game by Simon have been by that core Sky Climber just getting in over and over again. Rick untaps. Considers his play. Wonder if he'll be tapping the Lifespring Druid again. Wonder how many black spells he's running. His early game was very much red creatures and green creatures, but the Shrieker and the Oblivion Strike have been very key. Looks like it might be another Warden of Geometries. That card does get around. Slightly overcosted body. 2/3 Vigilance is a little bit overcosted at 4 mana, but slightly undercosted at 3, so it's difficult to know where to put it. Tapping for mana is pretty solid on a Vigilance body. It means you can attack and potentially use the mana while it's still attacking. It looks like a lot of things are coming in here. Baloth is coming in. A Swamp was played this turn, so Baloth is a 6/6. Hissing Quagmire becomes the 2/2 Death Touch, gets to kill the 6/6 Entanglers, runs in front of the Maw of Kozilek again. And now Simon's considering what his other plays are. He looks like he's going to block Lava Step Raider. He does have access... Rick does have access to red mana with the Lifespring Druid, so it would be a trade, but that does mean that Rick would be tapped out and unable to do anything else. An interesting line potentially would have been to double block the Maw of Kozilek with the 2 allies to force a positive trade in one respect. Either Rick pumps the Lava Step Raider to keep that alive, or to trade with the Felidug Hub, or he has to pump the Maw of Kozilek once to trade with one creature, and it would be the core Scythemaster, I believe. Entanglers is a 3/4, so it could trade with that, but it would get it off the table. I find Maw of Kozilek to be a very annoying card. If you can get rid of it when you have the opportunity to, you should certainly take it. Simon untaps. It's been a very back and forth game with just creatures crashing in either side. Though he can threaten lethal here, Simon can. He's got 3/3 attackers. 2 of them are evasive and one of them is just bigger than the creatures that Rick has out at the minute. Wouldn't surprise me to see if Simon has any follow-up of creatures that could block Maw of Kozilek and or Stalker Drone. We could see him attack with everything here. However, he could just sit back and just attack with the core Sky Climber for a slower but more assured path to victory. Simon doing a bit of maths, counting up what's actually going on over there. Simon chooses to play a Spawnbinder Mage. A little bit of a slow card. Tapping 2 of your creatures to tap down one of theirs isn't ideal, but if you're able to keep up enough blockers for the other things, taps down a creature with the core Entanglers, since Spawnbinder Mage is itself an ally. Now Simon has to make a decision on whether he makes any attacks. Chooses not to, chooses to leave back everything. He might have been inclined to get in with the core Sky Climber. I don't think you can be punished too hard from this. Rick only just drew 1 card, he otherwise doesn't have anything around. Rick attacks with Maw of Kozilek. Mobilizer Eldrazi is starting to look a bit better. Simon's board has been slowly becoming more and more toughness heavy. He's now got core Entanglers and Spawnbinder Mage, which will be affected by Mobilizer Eldrazi. And it looks like that's what Rick is going to do. He's going to activate a Mobilizer Eldrazi to just prevent the Entanglers and the Spawnbinder Mage from even doing anything. This might be a cue for Simon to maybe play something from his hand. If he's got any instants, he might need to start considering removing these reasonably high quality creatures. Now looking at what the board is doing. Unfortunately, he can't tap the Spawnbinder Mage and the core Entanglers this turn to tap down, for instance, the Maw of Kozilek, because Spawnbinder Mage did just come in. Rick attacking with 3 of his creatures, all devoid Eldrazi. Simon now pondering what he has to do to stay alive here. He is definitely facing down lethal. He has to block something. Warden of Geometries is sat off to the side to produce another colourless mana which would pump either more of Kozilek or Stalking Drone. It seems like the blocks that want to be made here are Course Scythemaster on Immobilizer Eldrazi and Course Skyclimber on the Stalking Drone. There goes the Scythemaster. Simon may be reluctant to give up that Skyclimber. It is his way to win this game. He's got no other reach available at the minute. It looks like Simon has made 1 block, which is going to take him down to 1 if the pump happens, though it looks like Rick is happy just for the trade to happen and for Simon to take 4 down to 3. Passes the turn back. Rick does have to be worried about swing back. If he taps the Warden of Geometries and is just left with 1 blocker, Simon does have an opening. There's good old Saddleback Lagak, the best green common. It's time for some Lagak attack. Almost certainly pumping up this core Sky Climber, possibly also the core Entanglers. The block on the Immobilizer Eldrazi was pretty crucial. Unlocks Spawnbinder Mage and Core Entanglers. It's going on the Spawnbinder Mage, which makes sense. It's now a 3/5. It can block Stalking Drone without Stalking Drone being able to pump to trade. Core Sky Climber coming in for 4 now. Suddenly Rick's on a 2-turn clock. 1 turn has just gone. He's going to need to find an answer, because it doesn't look like he can get him with enough damage on his own. He would need to take out 2 of Simon's creatures so that he could guarantee getting in 3 damage with either the Maw of Kozilek or the Stalking Drone. He's drawn a spell. It looks like it's a Chitinous Cloak. +2/+2 and Menace could be a problem here. Though I'm not sure whether it's going to be enough. Let's have a look. The best creature to put it on is probably going to be Maw of Kozilek. So, if he puts it on Maw is lethal on its own. But putting it on the weakest creature makes sense. Though this may still not be enough. Simon can... It might indeed be enough. If he attacks with all of his creatures, Simon would have to block the Lifespring Druid with 2 creatures, and then he's only got 1 blocker left for 3 attackers, which means that either the Stalking Drone or the Maw of Kozilek gets in. It looks like everything's being sent in, and it looks like Simon's going to have to pull something out with that 2 mana. But it was just a land in hand, and Rick takes game 1. Shuffle out of game 2 here. Looks like Rick is kept and Simon is taking a mulligan. Simon keeps his 6, scries, leaves it on top, and we're good to go. Simon's all ready to go, not expecting the 1-drop this time, but yep, Rick doesn't have it, so Forest for Simon, back to Rick. Both players have at least 2 colours of their mana that we know they're both on 3-colour decks. Hedron Crawler going to produce some ramp and some vital colourless mana. Simon very eager to get going, already drew his card by the time that Rick had played his Hedron Crawler. There's the core Sky Climber. Actual power and toughness versus some mana ramp. Let's see which actually comes out on top here. Rick taking his time, playing a land tapped. It's a Crumbling Vestige, which is going to give him a colour of mana this turn, but then produce colourless from here. And that's an Undergrowth Champion. That's going to be a problem if Simon can't immediately find an answer to it. As soon as 1+1/+1 counter gets on that thing, it's going to be very difficult to deal with. Though, having said that, Simon is playing black. He could have access to Oblivion Strike, and he could have access to a number of white removal spells which just destroy creatures rather than trying to deal damage to them. It's predominantly the green in his deck that would have difficulty dealing with Undergrowth Champion. Simon taking a little time, thinking about what he wants to play here. Facing down a Mythic is always a bit risky, but he does have the Oblivion Strike, so out goes the Mythic. And then he gets in for 3. Just on the ground, but Hedron Crawler is unlikely to block. Rick really wants that mana. He finds a land, so now he's got 1 of each colour. Rick taps all 5, plays a Chijuru Pathwarden, matches up quite nicely against the core Sky Climber. He's now ahead in the race. It's a 4-turn clock versus a 6-turn clock. Simon plays his core Entanglers, taps down the Pathwarden so he can get in for 3 without needing to tap to make it fly. Rick untaps, draws. Looks like he has a Reality Hemorrhage to take care of the core Sky Climber. It's going to make things really awkward, though the Entanglers means that the Vigilance is less of a problem if Simon can race. Rick taking his time here, considering his play. There's the mighty Sludge Crawler. Something to do with all of that mana. Though it looks like Rick chose not to attack there. Maybe he forgot. It was definitely a free attack. He could get in 5 damage. Now Spawnbinder Mage comes down, is online. Taps down the Pathwarden, gets in for 3 with the core Entanglers. Rick now on 11, and Simon 15. Rick taps 4 for more of Kozilek. Here comes the defense. Here we go. Here comes the attack. Down to 10 for Simon. This board is much harder for Simon to attack through now. He does have Hissing Quagmire though, so he can't, again, block something. Rick untaps and draws. Simon finding a lot of lands with not much action happening. Looks like Complete Disregard is going to completely disregard possibly the Spawnbinder Mage or the Core Entanglers. Rick is deciding which one wants to get rid of. Personally, I'd prefer just taking out the Entanglers. It's a higher value creature on its own. Spawnbinder Mage has less value, but he does decide to take care of the Spawnbinder Mage. It's possible he has a plan for the Core Entanglers. I think I would have gotten rid of the Core Entanglers there. In response, he taps down the Maw of Kozilek just so he can get his value this turn. The Core Entanglers can't really profitably block anyway. It could hold off Sludge Crawler, but stopping the Maw of Kozilek is more important. Since the Maw of Kozilek could trade with the Core Entanglers if he chose to block that way, which would be the most sensible block. While Sludge Crawler does get in for 2 points here, by tapping down the Maw of Kozilek, you're preventing a lot more than a mere 2 damage and an ingest. Embodiment of Insight coming away, and that's going to be game. Simon drew too many lands, the large 4/4 for 5 going away to the Sludge Crawler was the final nail in the coffin there. And Rick will take the game 2-0.